Chapter 15. The movie was almost over, but Ashley had seen it before, and knew what was coming. The little snake came onto the screen, and she closed her eyes and turned away. She really hated snakes and couldn't watch this. "You okay?" Jared's arm across her shoulders tightened. "Fine, I just don't do snakes." She listened for the music to change, then opened her eyes again to find Jared watching her, a faint smile curving his lips. "What?" "You're cute." She scowled. Jared chuckled and turned back to the movie. She frowned at him once more for good measure, then relaxed into the crook of his arm. His arm around her was nice in a way she hadn't thought about before. She'd never dated anyone who was content to sit, whether watching a movie or anything else, without pushing for more. When he'd first put his arm around her, she'd been waiting for it to tug her close, or for his hand to start roaming, but Jared had done nothing but let his arm rest around her shoulder. After a while, she'd scooted closer, her side pressing against his. Jared had snuggled against her but had still only sat and watched the movie. It was amazing to think maybe he didn't expect more just because he'd gotten it once. By the time the movie ended, she was leaning into him, with her head resting against his shoulder. "You want to find something else?" he asked as the credits started rolling up the screen. "I don't know." She glanced around until she found a clock. "It's almost 10. I should be getting home." "You're welcome to stay if you'd like, but no pressure. I'm enjoying spending time with you." She looked up at his face and saw no deception. "I'm enjoying it too." Tomorrow was her brother's day at the store, and she didn't need to be there at all. Yes, they worked random schedules, but it worked for them. "Why not? You pick the movie this time." She stood and stretched her arms over her head. "I'll be right back." She needed to pee again, before they started another one. When she returned, Jared sat on the sofa and previews were on the TV. "What are we watching?" she sat, turning her back to him and leaning into his side. "I thought I'd let this one be a surprise." He wrapped his arm over her shoulder and across her upper chest, above her boobs. He was holding her close, but not grabbing or groping. The title screen came on, and she found that he'd put in the first Star Trek remake. She couldn't help but smile. This was one of her favorites. The movie had been on for about 20 minutes when a shiver ran through her. "You cold?" "A little." "I'm sorry. I'm not used to how quickly this place cools off after dark. I can build a fire, if you'd like." "That would be nice." Jared paused the movie, and Ashley had to move so he could get up. "I can help." She started to stand. "No, you stay there. I've got it." He pulled a blanket from the back of a nearby chair and covered her lap with it. "Here, this will help until it warms up a little." It didn't take him long to build a fire, and only a few minutes longer to have a good-sized flame licking at the logs. The pop and sizzle of hot sap was a nice background as Jared settled back onto the sofa. She spread the blanket over his lap too as she moved back against him, and he restarted the movie. Jared put his arm back around her, and Ashley snuggled back against him with a sigh of contentment. They sat that way for the rest of the movie. When the credits began, Ashley yawned. "What now?" she asked without moving. "We have a decision to make." Oh, she hadn't been expecting him to say that. She wanted to hear what he was thinking. "I don't like the idea of you out on the lake this late. It's cold, and I would be afraid something could happen. You could fall in the icy water. It's up to you if you want to take your jet ski home, but I'll worry if you do." Ashley shook her head. "No, it's too late for that." "All right. If you want, I can drive you home." "Then I'd need to come back get the ski-doo." "That's true. Well, we still have a couple of choices. You can have the spare bedroom. I can tuck you in, snug as a bug, and leave you alone until morning, or you can join me in my bed, whichever you'd like. She loved that he didn't assume she wanted to crawl into bed with him, or that even if she did, that she wanted to get naked and sweaty. She did, but she liked that he'd made it her choice. Ashley pretended to think for a moment, glancing around the room while she did. The fire had burned low. Jared hadn't added any wood to it once he got it started, and while the coals gave plenty of heat, the flames were gone. A bed by myself would be cold and lonely. I wouldn't get much sleep, and I'm exhausted. Maybe it would be best if I bunk with you. That's a sound plan. Jared's voice was serious, but she couldn't see his face without moving, and she wasn't ready to do that. There's a flaw in your plan, though. Oh, what's the flaw? She could tell he was playing along. In order to go to bed, even yours, we have to get up. She sighed. Jared's body shook, she suspected he was laughing. She smiled and kept going. We have another option. It might be our best choice yet. What's that? I think we should just stay here. She dropped her head back against his shoulder and wondered what he would say. I mean, we're already comfortable and warm, she trailed off as she tried to come up with another argument. You have a point, and while I hate to poke holes in your plan, it won't remain warm long unless one of us gets up and adds wood to the fire. On top of that, I've got nowhere to rest my head. I'll be miserable long before morning if we stay here. He wiggled in his seat a little. Besides, I'm not convinced how comfortable this thing would be overnight. Ashley sighed again as though unsatisfied but willing to give in. All right then. I guess we should get up and go to bed. She wasn't as reluctant as she pretended to be, so she sat up, swung her legs off the couch and stood. Out of habit, she folded the blanket and put it back on the chair where it came from. When she turned around, he was watching her, waiting. Ready? Is that safe? She motioned to the fireplace. It will be by the time I turn everything off. My bedroom is the big one at the end of the hall. The top dresser drawer has t-shirts, if you want one, help yourself. There's a bathroom off the bedroom. I'll take care of things here and be right there. Ashley followed his directions and found a neat bedroom with a large window overlooking the lake on one wall. Even without the light on, the room was surprisingly bright from the moonlight reflecting off of the water. Ignoring the lights and dresser, she moved closer to the window, temporarily mesmerized by the moving glimmer of moonlight on the water. You all right? Jared asked behind her. Yeah, she kept her attention on the view. The light in the room dimmed some of the spectacle, but it was still attention-grabbing. I'm fine, I'm just enjoying the view. I would have thought you were used to it. I should be, but I love looking at the lake at night, and my bedroom doesn't have a view like this. I might never sleep if it did. It is nice. It's actually why I picked this room. He came up behind her, hugged her from behind, and looked over her head at the view. They stood for a while, until Ashley couldn't fight back a yawn any longer. I could stand here for hours, but I'm about to fall asleep on my feet. Then let's get into bed. You can see it from there. All right. She turned away from the window to go into the bathroom, stopping on the way to pull the top shirt from the drawer to wear to bed. Ashley emerged from the bathroom wearing Jared's t-shirt and her panties. The rest of her clothes were in her arms. You can put your clothes on the chair and climb on in. It's cool in here without much on, Jared said. She'd already noticed. Goosebumps had surfaced almost as soon as she'd stepped out of her jeans. The fire had been warm, but the heat hadn't made it this far. I'll be right out. Jared stepped past her. She put her clothes on the chair, then slipped between the sheets and pulled them up to her chin as she tried to get warm. The sheets were even cooler than the air, and she curled on her side to gaze out at the water while she waited for the bed to warm. When the bathroom door opened, she rolled onto her back and turned to look at Jared. "I took the side next to the window, I hope you don't mind." He looked down at her. He was wearing nothing but an indulgent smile and a pair of dark red briefs. "Not at all. It's where I thought you would be." He slid in and scooted close. Ashley rolled back to her side, and he came up behind her. His arm wrapped around her torso, and he pulled her against him in a tight hug for a moment, before relaxing his hold enough to be comfortable. Ashley wiggled back against him until she found the right spot, nestled into his warmth, then let out a contented sigh. "Comfortable?" Jared's voice was soft and his words feathered against her neck, sending shivers of need through her. "Very." "Good." He fell silent for a moment, then rubbed his face against her hair. The short bristles of his 3-day scruff catching and tugging at her hair. "I could get used to this." "Me too." She reached back and ran her hand along the side of his leg, first back and forth, then she drew abstract designs on his thigh. "I thought you were tired and wanted to sleep." His voice vibrated through her and made heat pool low in her belly. "I did then, now? Not so much." His hand splayed against her stomach, his thumb scraping against the underside of her breast through the thin cotton shirt and sending sparks of need through her. A soft moan escaped her lips as his mouth found the sensitive spot behind her ear. Jared's hand on her tummy disappeared. It came back a moment later, against her skin, as he slipped it under her shirt. The world outside faded, and the only things that mattered were the two of them and the heat building between them. Ashley turned to face him. Their mouths met in a soul-searing kiss. His hands skimmed over her body, and she tried to pull him closer. Ashley ached to feel more of him. Their clothes seemed to vanish, and the press of his body into hers took her breath away. All she could do was gasp his name and beg for more until the world narrowed to the feel of his body and hers.